Great report from CNBC talking about the ins and outs of Celsius, disclosing that there was a lot of trouble before everything started falling apart over the last 8 weeks or so. We have HR reports internally about hiring the wrong people, about having very, very small compliance teams, about people insider trading the Cell token, trying to pump it, about executives at the firm dumping Cell token on retail, offering high interest rates without any of the ability to meet those interest rates. It's basically as close of a bombshell as you can with Celsius right now. Of course, all this comes as we are digging through the filings for Celsius through their Chapter 11 bankruptcy right now. David, I do want to throw this one up to you for some of the highlights. There's a few fan favorites you can pick from in here. Of course, every single one is more cringy than the next and more devastating for someone who's caught in the middle of this.
Yeah, I think the thing that I mostly wanted to highlight is kind of a bit unspoken here, which is their source for this at least included one person who was in the quote unquote compliance department of 3 people. But what's not stated here is that what they're describing as compliance, or what they're saying was included in the duties of this compliance department, isn't even what you would conventionally consider a compliance question. Compliance normally involves making sure you're not breaking any laws, making sure you're following anti-money laundering regulations. But at least in this piece, the suggestion was that the compliance department was actually responsible for evaluating the technical risk of investments that were being made. Compliance and risk assessment are generally much different duties. And if these 3 people were not only trying to figure out anti-money laundering issues, but also trying to figure out whether Badger DAO was going to get hacked, which is one of the things that happened, that's really disturbing and suggests just rampant incompetence and mismanagement here. I'm not going to totally say that is exactly what was happening. There's a little bit that's ambiguous here. But if the compliance department was actually doing the risk assessment on investments, that's a little bit concerning, I think. Jen, what are your thoughts on Celsius?
Yeah, I know we're talking about this as a bombshell, but I mean, I'm not that surprised. The article talks about risk-taking, disorganization, market manipulation. We look at regulation in the industry. It's so gray. And we talk about FOMO when it comes to retail investors, but I think that FOMO really does exist when it comes to crypto executives. Also, you see this at crypto events. It's who can throw the biggest party, who has the bigger boat. And so in an industry that doesn't have regulation and everyone is just kind of doing their own thing and trying to show who has more money than the next company, I'm not super surprised that corners were cut and there was insider trading and executives were just looking out for themselves. This comes back to ethics, which I think is kind of, I don't want to say questionable in the crypto industry because there are a lot of very honorable people who work in this industry, but there's been story after story that really bring ethics into the question. And unfortunately, I think that we need regulation because if we trust people to just act on their own ethics, they get caught up in this FOMO culture that's so ripe, I think, in this industry. But Wendy, what do you think?
So I'm not a big proponent of regulation. I know that we do need some sort of regulation to come into play, but the type of people that we currently have making decisions for us, I don't think they have our best interest. And when we talk about my story later, I will elaborate on this more. I do want to know where the PR people were, where it was legal, where it was marketing, why weren't there checks and balances put in play? I do know in traditional firms, they have very strict rules. Like if you mess up 3 trades, you're done for the day or whatever it may be. And I don't know why these types of rules were not brought into this particular firm. Makes no sense to me, especially when you're managing this large amount of assets. So I kind of want to ask Will for his thoughts on this now.
Yeah, I'll take it a little bit of a different way. Just looking at the Celsius picture in general and looking at 3AC yesterday, like we saw like the bombshell report of that whole come out yesterday as well. It's fascinating to watch how much money is in the space and how quickly it also disappears. Like we're talking billions of dollars. And crypto's market cap hit almost 3 trillion in November when Bitcoin hit $69,000 per coin. And so now we see like where a lot of this money was at, right? It was tied up in these firms, it's tied up in this venture capital, it's tied up in all these deals for lending markets. And then all of a sudden poof, like they're gone, right? They just explode, they disappear. And you look at CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap, whatever you're going to look at for these token prices, you might think, the token's down. But now we see through these filings that like these are people's lives at risk, and their whole financial health is at risk. And now they're out of money, they're out of a job, or they're, in the case of the 3AC founders, on the run because they have so many creditors looking after them. So to me, like I'm just taking all this in and really just pretty impressed by the self-destructive tendencies within crypto, and then pretty impressed with like how much money just absolutely disappeared so quickly. Throw it back to you, Wendy.
I mean, it's not just crypto, though. That's what we have to understand is this, a lot of this type of corruption and this unethical behavior happens in traditional finance. It happens in healthcare. It happens in every single other industry. So for us to sit and just say, this only happens in crypto, and for the media to just say it only happens in crypto, it's kind of doing a disservice, and it's making the entire crypto and Bitcoin industry look absolutely terrible. So yes, terrible things did happen. People did very bad things, but at the same time, it does happen in other industries. And I feel like the only thing that humankind has not been able to advance on in life is ego. And we're seeing that still happen in 2022.
Yeah,
right,
I would piggyback. Oh, can I just make one more thing that came out in this reporting that we
take a break.
suspected?
Come on, I need a taco break.
Speaking of things that happen in traditional finance, you have these things called stock buybacks that happen pretty regularly. Well, Celsius was doing its own version of stock buybacks. It apparently spent $350 million buying its own token. And there will be, again, lots of discussions about regulation, but I think that one of my modest proposals for regulation is that a traditional company should not be able to issue a token, period, and should not be managing a token, period. There is just too much crossover there and too much weird stuff going on. So I'll leave it at that.